So I assume you've seen all 8 episodes of American Born Chinese.
I have, yes.
All right. Okay. All right. Then we.
It was very fun, especially being an American-born Chinese myself, made it even more enjoyable.
Oh, that's wonderful. I know we work on not only the second generation, but we also work with the first generation, right, which is us, the parents. And I think it was in an attempt to give a very full and uh, holistic view of the experience, because we don't exist singularly, right? We exist in a community. So I think that it was quite a masterstroke for Kelvin Yu and Jin Liang and Destin too. I mean, to decide to expand the family, because in the graphic novel, actually, I think we were in 2 panels, if I'm not mistaken. And in one of the panels, you just saw the back of the father's head. So, I think I quite like that development with this particular show.
Yeah, I actually got to read the comic beforehand because it wasn't too long, but reading it was really interesting. I don't think I'd ever seen anything like it. And so of course there are, quite a few changes to the show, but it was nice to have a bit of that backstory. I'm wondering, did you get a chance to read the comic, or was that something that helped with prep or wouldn't have helped?
Well, it always does, I mean, I think to see where to go to the source, I think, I mean, and I think even after reading the comic, the graphic novel, I actually went online to see the talks that Gene had given over the last decade, pretty much, about the graphic novel. So I found going back to the source very useful, because I think even though the show has been adapted for television, and there's a certain linearity about it that is required for the medium. The book, but the show still, I think, captures the essence of the book. The book is very, in a way, it's almost stream of consciousness, right? Because I mean, it moves from,
Jumps around three stories.
yeah, it moves from one story to the other, quite quite fluidly, but at the same time, it's almost Lynchian, right? It's almost free associative, kind of, again, stream of consciousness, which was very intriguing, obviously. But I found all of them somehow hung as a whole. And that was what was really interesting about the graphic novel, right? Because it has so many different elements, but it still kind of hangs together as of one piece. And I think the spirit of the book is still in the TV show.
Yeah, I definitely agree that with all of the stories being woven together more and more at the end as well.
Yeah.
So to go back a bit to when you first heard about the show, I'm curious how it was pitched to you, and if you were always up for the role of Jin's father, Simon, or if there were other potential roles that you were up for.
It was always Jin's father, Simon, which was quite quite surprising, but very gratifying as well, because I mean, my recent works don't really speak to that role. Whether it is Mortal Kombat or Skyscraper, those are quite different kinds of roles. So for the powers that be, Leslie Wu, the casting director, Destin, Gene, and Kelvin, and Melvin Marr as well. I mean, to have seen in my body of work over the last 15 years, something in there that was right for the role was actually, quite out of the blue, because I would think, it's a little bit of out of the box thinking, but very inspired. So they came to me with it, and I hadn't played a role like this in a while. I think as close as I got was probably Final Recipe, actually, strangely enough, with Michelle Yeoh, that I did with Henry Lau, a young actor, singer from Super Junior, back in 2012, I think. that was, pretty as close as it is as a father. So I was interested in it because because that particular topic and that theme was already on my mind, having come out of uh, the pandemic, and having hit a milestone in my life, turning 50. You start thinking about things like that, or you start thinking about mortality, you start thinking about children, you start thinking about even your own relationship with your parents. And so all of that kind of dovetailed into this decision to join the show, because I felt that the show does explore the nature of fathers and sons, husbands and wives, and beyond that, actually, Asian fathers and sons and Asian
Exactly.
husbands and wives. So no, it was an easy pitch. I think I was very attracted to the project.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned yourself that they were kind of casting, like given your body of work, like kind of casting against type in a way,
Mhm.
which I thought was very cool. But so, you're no stranger to action, of course, from your past work in Hollywood blockbuster. But for this series in particular, do you wish that you got to do any of the like the stunts, the wuxia, or was it kind of nice just sit back?
I was really actually happy to sit this one out. I've been a big fan of Daniel Wu for the longest time. So just to watch him in action, I knew Leonard Wu from he had done the second season of Marco Polo, even though I was only in the first one. And he played the Bull Demon, and of course Michelle and Jimmy, who's actually quite nifty, with the stick as well. So I was happy to sit this one now. No, I mean I wasn't chomping at the bit to join them. In fact, I was quite enjoying developing a dad bod for this show, and together with Joy Cretin, the costume designer, we went about trying to design something that was appropriate. I think everything went into giving him a little bit of heft, giving him a bit of age, giving him a bit of world weariness. So that went into first the choice of the glasses, and that
Yeah,
was the first thing that was
100% dad.
that was the first thing that was picked, because Joy and Jose, the other costume designer, I mean, they brought out this box of glasses, and they were like, pick one. I looked at it, and this one spoke to me. I said, I'm going to pick this one. I know you probably need a second choice or third choice for the producers to decide, but I think it's this one. And then we went with that one. And then so the glasses came first, and then it was kind of the very heavy fabric, oversized polo shirts, and the corduroy pleated pants, and the very, very soft-soled flat canvas shoes, right? That was a kind of a fake leather shoes that gives him a kind of a, not a waddle, but kind of a kind of a gait that was where the center of gravity is a lot lower. And so all that went into that. So I mean, it was fun. I mean, it's still a physical performance, even though I didn't get to be on wires and fight with people.
Well, I love that insight into the character, because you can really see like there's there's a persona there, and it feels like there's a whole history to it. Something I was a bit curious about, because the concept of names and mispronouncing names is like is a very strong theme in the show. Everybody, people call Jin Jim, and they keep saying Wang instead of Wong. Of course, you have a monologue where Simon explains this, but for your name, you go by Chin Han, but I did. It's gonna sound weird, but I looked up the Mandarin. It's Jin Han, right? But I'm curious. Like, I'm not Chinese, so I could be pronouncing that wrong as well. So, what do you go by?
Right, it's Jin Han.
Jin
Yes,
Han.
it is Chin Han. So this is interesting as well. When I first came to Hollywood, I mean, it was very confusing for people, because even with other actors like Chow Yun Fat, right? So some people call him Chow, some people call him Fat. or let's go even further with the Hiroyuki Sanada, who's also a friend, a Japanese actor, and they'll call him Hiro, they'll call him Hiroyuki, they'll call him Yuki, they'll call him, there's a lot of this kind of uncertainty as what to call, because the first name and the last name in Asia and the West, I mean, they're kind of inverted, right? In Asia, your last name goes first, and we call it the surname, and then it goes after. So it was hard for people to know whether to call me Chin or to call me Mr. Han or to call me Mr. Chin, and I would always say it's Chin Han, basically.
Because it's both, yeah.
Yeah, and the meaning of the name Jing Han, it was actually quite well thought out. I'm always very I'm happy with what my parents did, because my brother's name is Wei Han and is Wei Han, and it comes as a pair, actually, the name Wei Han and Jing Han. Han is because we're Hanzu the Ren, basically, but the Jing Wei. So Wei is actually the longitude of the world. Jing is the latitude of the world. So basically, when my parents named us, it's a pair, right? So it's the two brothers who kind of define the world as we know it. And I think that, I mean, they obviously is very lofty, but I mean, it's very meaningful.
That's so interesting, because see, this is why I love Chinese names, because there's so much, so many layers to them.
Mhm.
My name is Fate, just Fate, like you, Fate, and honestly, my name's a little bit boring because it's just like a typical girl's name. But yeah, thank you for illuminating that, because that's really, I haven't heard of those names. But so speaking of Chinese, right? A lot of the show is in Mandarin, and I liked that people spoke Mandarin when it made sense to, like you and Yang, you would speak Chinese with each other as your characters, the gods would speak Chinese. But were there any challenges with that? With people having different dialects, coming from different backgrounds, different levels of Chinese?
I think we were also very fortunate because with the casting, because when they cast Yan Yan, who's from Malaysia and actually lives in Singapore, it's where I grew up, so the kind of Mandarin that we spoke, it's very close, not only in terms of accent, but also in terms of vocabulary. So with that, I think it wasn't that difficult to find, a standard form of that Mandarin that we were speaking between us. I mean, obviously with the heavenly gods and the deities, and there's something more formal about it, more baroque about what their language. It's almost like Wen Yan Wen, right? Which is a kind of a very formal classical way of speaking. Whereas ours, I mean, we could plug right in because we came from the same region, and I think that was the easier part. The part that was obviously challenging was because all the Asian people who were involved with the show come from different parts of the world, right? Our writers, most of them being Asian American, are from different parts of the world. We had a translator on set, and she came from another part of the world, but we all speak Mandarin, as you know. So trying to find the something that would translate universally. I mean, that was the thing that we needed to get right. But I think the writers, to their credit, weren't too precious with their words. I think they were very collaborative, and we're very happy to find that language for the show. But I have to say, though, that, I mean, this is rare, though, right? I mean, for a show that's spoken so much in Mandarin, I think for myself, I think I do about 80 to 90% of my scenes in Mandarin, I believe. And for Disney to actually just take that leap of faith and to say, it's fine, people are going to read the subtitles, they're going to understand it. I mean, it's really, not just a leap of faith, but also, showing respect to the audience, that they're ready for it. They're ready to see this. They're not just ready to see, whatever they're used to seeing in terms of films with Asian content, whether it is martial arts or fighting, that they're ready to see drama,
Real people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was an interesting experience watching it, because the scenes that were in Mandarin were, of course, I was listening, but also reading subtitles. Uh, and it's not like a exact translation, because the exact translation would probably not make the most sense, like the different contexts. I'm curious to, when you were able to watch the finished product, like if you watched it with English subtitles and if there were like interesting uh, inconsistencies.
Um, I I think, I studied linguistics, right? So when I was in the university, so there's semantic meanings and pragmatic meanings of words. So I think uh, it's funny. I mean, sometimes what we're saying, obviously, pragmatically, needs another kind of wording, kind of sentence structures. So I feel that, yes, I mean, some of it is a departure from what we are actually saying, but I think if we had gone literal, word for word translation, it would have made even less sense. I know it's a bit of a pity, because unless you learn the language, the nuances of it, and sometimes the kind of the cultural references or the specificities of maybe something that, the meaning of an utterance, whether it is sympathetic or whether it's an attack or whether it's a sarcasm or irony or humor, that stuff is the trickiest to kind of translate. So I think we were doing it two times, right? I mean, first the writers are writing it, and then there is a translation, and then we work on it, and then in our working of it, me and Yan Yan, and then that it becomes another thing, and then it gets sent back to the editors, and then there's another process of translation that reaches the audience. So I know we lose some of the things, but at the same time, I feel that we do gain some in terms of accessibility. I think if we were to lean very heavily into the kind of colloquialism or the metaphors that the language uses, it may not be as accessible as it is.
Yeah, because I think there's some sayings, you have to like tell the whole story to explain, and then there's some things, if you gave it in the exact terms, it would sound a bit harsh. I think.
Yeah, it's
So,
very difficult. Yeah, I mean, especially like right? I mean, the finding your way to the, like, if you go to Europe and you learn Italian or French, I mean, finding your way to the bus stop, finding a place to eat, that's easy. But humor is almost the last thing that one learns when you learn a language. Irony is part of that.
right.
Metaphor is part of that, and that stuff is just tricky.
So I've got just one more question. So this series and the comics, or the graphic novel, draws on a lot of mythology, a lot of folklore. We all grew up with different kinds of stories that we were told. I grew up with a lot of Western stories, but also with, I watched a bit of Sun Wukong and that kind of thing. So I'm curious, what kinds of stories did you grow up with?
I grew up with those stories. I grew up with a lot of the Mandarin, the wuxia xiaosuo, right? And they are, you have Yu Ji, which is Journey to the West. You have Sui Hu Zhuan, which is Water Margin. Sanguo Yanyi, which is the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and then the whole bunch of Louis Cha's novels, like a flight. Sen Jiao Xiali is a fight of the Condor Heroes, or it's one of those. That whole range, I read all of that. Yi Tian Tu Long Ji, Tian Long Ba Bu. So I read all of that, but at the same time, because I feel like being in Singapore was interesting. We were so far south, right, in Southeast Asia. We were kind of at the confluence of a lot of, and it being kind of a busy port and a harbor, and one of the biggest harbors, busiest harbors in the world to this day. There was a confluence of a lot of influence. from east to west, north to south. So I wasn't only reading that stuff, I was reading all kinds of other things as well. I was incredibly curious about Greek mythology. Clash of the Titans was one of my favorite movies growing up, the old one with Ray Harryhausen's visual effects. So that stuff was very interesting. I mean, the mythology of the Medusa, Pegasus, Zeus, Mount Olympus, that stuff was also very was fascinating to me. So I think, yes, I was familiar with all of that, but I was also seeking out all these other things. But the one thing, I mean, obviously, which this show shows, is that there are a lot of universal qualities about them. They're about quest. It's a hero's journey. There are tragic flaws in your protagonists. And you have all that. You have all that kind of communal, I think, seeking for meaning in the world in all of this mythology. So I found it very common, and I think the show is interesting because it has reached an audience, I mean, that is beyond the Asian community. I mean, the number of times in the past week, because I've been hanging out with Ben, who plays my son, and Yen Yen, who are both in town to do the press and publicity for the show. I've been hanging out with them, but everywhere we go, I mean, there are people who are running up to say, we love the show, this means so much to me. And what is surprising about that is the demographics, right? I mean, it's really a lot of different races that are responding to it. So obviously there's something universal here that we've tapped into that I find very, very gratifying.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's been great to watch the show and particularly the success that it's been seeing. Those are all my questions, and I think I have to hop off the Zoom because somebody else needs to use it. But congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking with me, and I hope to see a season 2 or a spinoff or something. But
Well, thank you very much for enjoying the show.